Okay, now let's talk about working with the data that's inside your worksheet. You will most likely always be adding new data or changing existing data that's there, moving the data around. So these are all forms of editing within the worksheet. We looked a little bit at moving around within the worksheet. We know that our arrow keys will move us left, right, up, and down. The tab key will move us to the right. And so let's take a look at editing cells now. We also know that we can select a cell anytime by just clicking on it. If I single click on a cell, like I have here, and start to make changes, those changes will immediately override the current contents. So right now I've just selected the yoga cell. If I just start typing, say CrossFit, yoga has been overwritten. So I'm not editing inside the cell in that case. I'm simply selecting a cell and overriding the contents. Let me undo that. Okay, I've reversed that change now. We're back to the contents of that cell being yoga. Another way that I can edit and select the contents of this cell are to double click on the cell. Remember, if I single click, I will be selecting the entire cell. If I double click, that drops my cursor inside the cell now. Now I can add other words to what's inside the cell. I'm editing the contents of the cell, not the entire cell. Notice also that up in my formula bar, I have the ability to directly edit here. So if you wanted to have a space up there that might be a little wider, easier to work in, you can do that there too. This will come into play when we actually work with some mathematical functions. We'll be able to edit that here instead of inside of a cell where things might be a little harder to see what's going on. So I'm going to set this back now. If I were working across this row and updating values, it might be best to use tab to go across to the right. On the other hand, if I were selecting that cell and I just changed it now to 450, if I hit my return key or enter key, that moves me downwards. At this point, we now can see the difference between clicking in the cells with a single click or a double click. So let me highlight this green. So now let's talk about moving data around. Let's say this yoga here, I wanted to have actually appear in row 11. The easiest way to do that is using your cut, copy, and paste commands that are keyboard shortcuts. So here I'm working on a Mac with Command, Control will be on a Windows machine. So I'm going to actually choose Command X, which is cut. And notice what happens here on this cell. This cell is now, the contents are grayed out, and the border on the cell is a moving dashed line. That is indicating that I have this cell in prep for paste. The contents of the cell are now on the clipboard. If I come down to 11 and choose that and choose Command V or Control V, I've now pasted there. Let's look at that a slightly different way. I'll undo that. Let's say I want to move the whole row. I can choose the whole row selector or the column. Let's work with this row. Let's move this whole row down to row 10. So I can choose Command X, which is cut, Control X, choose the whole cell, and Command V for paste. Okay, so cutting and pasting, copy, cut, and paste using your keyboard shortcuts are very valuable. Let's look at that in the same way for a column. Let's say I wanted to move the price column out because I have some other things that I want to put in between. I can cut this with Command X, come over to column E, select the whole column, and paste it there. Now I'm moving things around. Okay, one last way to move things around is a little bit more manual, and let's say I wanted to move yoga off somewhere like we looked at in the first example. If I get to the edge of this cell, you see that the hand icon is chosen. I can now click and drag this and move it somewhere. So that's an option for moving things around as well. If you're doing some quick changing of things or values, switching some values around, that's another way to do it. Let's look at sorting. This is a very common feature. You'll use this for text or for numbers. We may want to sort these alphabetical. We may want to sort numbers sold or price, which are both numeric format, in ascending or descending based on biggest to smallest or smallest to largest. Let's say we wanted to sort this data. We want to sort it by price. We want to go lowest price to highest as we go down. So I'm selecting just the values. I don't want to select the word price because that will also come into play in the sort. But if I select these, just these values, and I come up here on the ribbon to my Home tab, in the Editing group, you can see Sort and Filter. If I choose that submenu, now I have a couple of choices for sorting, as well as a custom sort, which we'll get to later. But I can just simply sort ascending, which would be smallest to largest, or I can sort descending, large down to smallest. Let's choose ascending. Now, what's happened here? Because I have only selected these 5 cells, Excel knows that these other columns to the left of it are related to it. In other words, $29.99 is the price of the Pilates video, and the numbers sold were 156. If I were to sort just these 5 cells without including their relationship to these cells, then the data gets kind of messed up. The data is not correct any longer. The prices will change on the items, and we don't want that. So Excel immediately gives you the choice to expand and sort. In other words, it knows the other columns that are related to this price that we have here, and it will let you expand the sort. You can just sort those 5, but we wouldn't want to do that here. So I'm going to choose expand and sort. And notice the prices do now go from smallest to largest, but the other values went with them as well. So now we do see that the step videos are the lowest price items, and the weight training videos are the highest. I could also switch it and come here again, do the same thing with a sort, and sort descending, highest price to lowest price. Again, I will expand and sort here so things stay together. I could choose alphabetical by the name of the video, sort and filter, ascending, A to Z. Again, it's going to ask me to expand and sort. And so now I'm kickboxing down to yoga, alphabetical. And finally, numbers sold, same thing, smallest to largest, expand and sort. So we can work with our data all kinds of ways here with sorting, but you do want to be careful that you expand to capture the other columns or in some cases rows, but the other columns that are related to what you're sorting. Okay, let's look at manipulating our worksheet where we might need to have more columns or rows. That's the insert row or insert column command. Let's say that my price here, we did it by copy and pasting, but we could also do it simply by, if we were going to move the price over to here on E, I could certainly come here and just choose insert rows or columns. In this case, it's column because I have column selected. Whenever you insert, it will insert before the current one you're selected. So if I wanted to put a column in front of column C, I would choose column C and choose insert. And now column C has become column D, and I have a blank column C here. Let's look at it with rows. Let's say I wanted to bring in another item in here in front of yoga, before yoga, and I select that row. I can right-click over here and choose insert rows. I can also come up to my ribbon and I could insert a row here, and notice that it has put the new row before the current row that I had selected. Okay, so that's inserting rows and columns. That's an important feature that you'll use a lot. If we were going to delete columns and clear columns, that's very simple. Just like if I were to want to remove the contents of the step cell, the cell that has the word step in it, I can just hit the delete key. Once I have it selected, remember I'm then editing the whole cell, I can just hit the delete key. Let me undo that. Let's say I wanted to get rid of the entire price column. I could just hit delete there, and that will remove it. Undo. And finally, if kickboxing videos were not part of our form anymore, I can just delete this. And notice what it does there. It leaves the cell blank, so I'm deleting all the contents. But let's look at that a different way. If I wanted to get rid of this row, not clearing the contents, but removing the entire row, I could choose delete rows and see what happened there. It actually brought the step row up and replaced the step row. So I didn't have a blank row. One of those is clearing the contents and the other one is deleting the entire row. Same thing that you saw when I hit the delete key on the column. That's just deleting the contents. So that's an important thing to remember.